Hello, Philadelphia. Hello, hello, hello. Don't jump. Good to see you all. This crowd's so loud, I think they can hear us in Latrobe. They're going to hear us. They're going to hear us on Tuesday. Folks, I'm Jill Biden's husband, a Philly girl. She's ready for Game 6, like all of you. It's good to be home. It's good to be with family. That includes someone we all love, Barack Obama, a great president, historic president, and I'm proud to say a dear friend. Well, folks, 3 days until one of the most important elections, one of the most important elections in our lifetime. It's going to shape, the outcome's going to shape our country for decades to come. And the power to shape that outcome is in your hands. 2 years ago, you used that power to make Donald Trump not only a former president, but you made him a defeated president. And this year, you have the power to make John Fetterman your next United States Senator. And Josh Shapiro, your next governor. Look, folks, I want to be very clear, and I mean this sincerely, about what's on the ballot this year. Your right to choose is on the ballot. Your right to vote is on the ballot. Social Security and Medicare is on the ballot. There's something else on the ballot. Character. Character's on the ballot. When I think of character, I think of John Fetterman. You know, in its endorsement of him, the Philadelphia Inquirer today said, John knows what his values are. Well, in my view, I've been saying for a long time, I'm a Pennsylvania boy born and raised in Scranton, but for the longest time, Delaware, like many other small places, did not have a television station. So Philadelphia TV had to cover me the same as they covered all the Pennsylvania senators. I was known as Pennsylvania's third senator. My point is, I know Pennsylvania well. And John Fetterman is Pennsylvania. He is Pennsylvania. And Oz and Pennsylvania? Look, I lived in Pennsylvania longer than Oz has lived in Pennsylvania. And I moved away when I was 10 years old. Look, like a lot of us, John's gotten knocked down, but he gets back up. He's gotten up quickly. John has character, integrity, and he's going to be a hell of a good senator, United States Senator for Pennsylvania. And the other thing is, don't worry, we're going to talk about Iran. Courage. Courage is also on the ballot. When I think of courage, I think of Josh Shapiro. This guy will take on anyone and back down to no one. And we saw that in 2020. He stood up for the Constitution. He stood up for the rule of law. He stood up for the people of this state. And he's going to be one hell of a fantastic governor. He really is. But it's not just John and Josh. We've got a great Democratic lineup on the ballot here in this state. You heard from a lot of them today. You heard from a lot of them. We have some We have one of the best delegation in Congress. I keep making myself a Pennsylvanian again. So really, Democrats up and down the ballot, we need to elect them all. We need it badly. Pennsylvania, this isn't a referendum this year. It's a choice between two vastly different visions of America. Vastly different. Maybe it's in our blood, but John and I believe that it's all about fighting for working and middle-class people. The way I've said from the beginning of my objective when I ran for president was to build an economy from the bottom up and the middle out. It's a fundamental shift compared to the Oz and the mega Republican trickle-down economics. Oh, really? This ain't your father's Republican Party. This is a different breed of cat. I really mean it. Look, they're all about the wealthier getting wealthy and the wealthier staying wealthy. The middle class gets stiffed. The poor get poorer under their policy. You saw what happened last time under my predecessor. The economy was in ruins. He was the first president since Herbert Hoover to lose jobs in the course of his presidency. The unemployment rate was 6.4%. He lost manufacturing jobs and hundreds of small businesses here in the state and 100,000 nationwide. Look, folks, the country is in a pandemic with no plan how to get out. The day I was sworn in, only 2 million people have been vaccinated. Now, more than 220 Americans are fully vaccinated. So we moved. And our approach is working. Since I came to office, we've created 10 million new good-paying jobs. 10 million. Because of you all. 10 million. The unemployment rate is 3.7%, near a record 50-year low. John and I understand we need to make things in America the first time in a long time, and we are. That means instead of shipping jobs overseas, we're shipping product overseas. I'm serious. We've created so far 700,000 manufacturing jobs just in the last 20 months. 700,000. But for all our progress, by the way, where the heck is it written that we can't be the manufacturing capital of the world again? Because we will be. We will be. And folks, look, but a lot of families are still struggling. A lot of families are struggling. That's why I signed into law the Inflation Reduction Act. It's going to reduce the cost of everyday things in families in Pennsylvania. Things you have to pay for every month, and you have to have enough in your paycheck to do it. We gave Medicare the power to negotiate lower prescription drug costs. The same power the Veterans Administration has to cut drug prices in half. We tried to get that done for years when I was in the Senate and Vice President. But Big Pharma spent a lot of money and supported a lot of folks. Well, guess what? Not this year. We beat Big Pharma, and the American people won. We put a cap of $2,000 a year in prescription drugs for seniors on Medicare, no matter what their drug costs were. And some of them pay $10,000, $12,000, $14,000 a year for cancer drugs. But now, beginning January 1, they will not have to pay more than $2,000 a year, period. Period. And we put a cap on insulin to deal with their diabetes. Instead of paying $400 a month like they're paying now, they're going to pay no more than $35 a month. And with John Fetterman in the Senate, with that one more vote I need, we're going to make sure we cap those prices for every single person, for all that life, because they blocked. We had it in the original bill, but it only stayed in for Medicare recipients, but everyone. How many of you know somebody who has to take insulin for diabetes? Look around. And it's incredibly costly, no matter what your age, and it's badly needed. And folks, look, we made the biggest investment to deal with the climate crisis ever. We're lowering energy costs for families. And by the way, Josh and John know that we can cap oil and gas price wells, abandoned mines. We can do that in western Pennsylvania. We can create thousands of good-paying jobs for the same people who dug those mines in the first place. That's why we're investing $350 million here in this part of the country to do just that. We're not just talking it, we're doing it. We're going to do this while reducing the federal deficit. You know, because of the help I had from the senators in the Democratic Congress, we literally cut the federal debt in half by $1.4 trillion. $1.4 trillion. Just this year. And last year by $350 billion. And another $250 billion over the next decade. Look, I don't want to hear from the MAGA Republicans who blew up the debt. We're the ones bringing it down. They shot it up. And by such a massive reduction in debt, we're able to help working and middle-class families in America. Look, we're finally making sure the biggest corporations begin to pay their fair share, for God's sake. One of the reasons they're so upset with me is we just passed a minimum 15% tax. Look, folks, if you're a school teacher, you pay more than that. If you're a cop, you pay more than that 15%. But the days are over where corporations paying zero federal tax. By the way, in 2020, 55 of the largest corporations in America made $40 billion, and they paid not one single penny in federal tax, not one. Because we reduced the deficit so much, we're in a position to help millions of working and middle-class folks caught in the crossfire of the pandemic and what happened with the Russians moving into Ukraine. Because I acted, we provided $10,000 in student debt relief. And another $10,000 if you got a Pell Grant. No one under 20, you have to be making less than 125 a year, and 90% of that money goes to people earning less than $75,000 a year. And look, it's an incredible burden to carry. So now they're going to be able to buy a home, start a business, just get a little bit of breathing room. And what are MAGA Republicans like Oz and Mastrano's talking about? They're trying to stop me. Their hypocrisy is unbelievable. The same MAGA Republicans who took hundreds of thousands of dollars and even millions of dollars in the pandemic relief loans had their loans forgiven, are trying now to block student loans. Marjorie Taylor Greene. God bless her soul. She and her husband had $183,000 in PPP loans forgiven. Congressman Vern Buchanan of Florida, he got over $2 million forgiven. Who the hell do they think they are complaining about helping out students? Who do they think? I really mean it. And what the students are going to, the people getting debt relief are going to be spending the money on growing the economy. For God's sake, Oz and MAGA Republicans don't think we should give working and middle-class Americans a break. But here's what they do think instead. They want to make permanent the $2 trillion tax cut that they passed when Trump was president. That tax cut is not a penny of it's paid for, and it goes to the biggest corporations, and it will explode the deficit by trillions of dollars. They think the biggest oil companies, that just the 6 largest oil companies, in the middle of this crisis we're in, you know how much money they made in the third and fourth quarter? I mean, the second and third quarter? $100 billion. $100 billion. No. It's outrageous. Look, they should have used that money, what they're supposed to do, to lower gas prices at the pump for the American people. If they did, the price of the pump nationally would be 50 cents lower than it is today per gallon. It gets worse. Do you know what their number one priority is if they win? They made it. Look, they're saying it out loud. They want to get rid of everything we just did. The power we just gave Medicare to negotiate drug prices, gone. The $2,000 cap on prescription drugs, gone. The $35 cap on insulin, gone. The tax credit for lower energy costs, gone. 50% corporate rates, gone. And the $800 savings in health care premiums we just got for families in the Affordable Care Act, gone. In fact, they want to do away with the Affordable Care Act. And that means millions of people with pre-existing conditions lose their insurance completely. No matter how hard they try to get rid of Obamacare, I'm never going to let it happen. And John Fetterman will not let it happen either. But folks, these guys and women never cease to amaze me, man. They never cease to amaze me. Now it gets worse. They're literally coming after Social Security and Medicare. No. Look, I know the only thing all you younger people in here, and thank God there's so many of you, I know the thing you know is from the time you're 16, you have money taken out to pay for Social Security. But guess what? You're somebody out there who's busting their neck. You just lost your husband or your wife. You're 66, 68 years old, and they want to take away your Medicare and your health and your Social Security. Now, you think I'm exaggerating. First front page of the New York Times talked about it. I want to show you what, there's a guy out there, they're telling us what they're going to do. They're saying it straight out loud. At least I give them credit for that. And look, here's what they're going to do. They want to do. There is a guy named Senator Rick Scott of Florida, who's in charge of electing the Republicans in the Senate. He's the guy pushing Oz, okay? Well, let me show you. Read from, they listed in a program, listed all their proposals. This is too small to be able to read. I just circled the one and brought it out here, and I'm going to quote what they say about Social Security. It says, all federal legislation sunsets in 5 years. If the law is worth keeping, Congress can pass it again. Means that the law literally goes out of existence unless it's affirmatively voted back into existence. And then along came Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, senator. By the way, he thinks 5 years is too long. Not a joke. This almost is so surreal sounding. He thinks Social Security and Medicare should be in the chopping block every single year. If Congress doesn't vote to keep it, for the first time, it goes away. Not a joke. It goes away. It's not just Social Security and Medicare. He also wants to put veterans' benefits on the line. Look, and put everything at risk. Elect John Fetterman to the Senate, please. He'll protect and strengthen Social Security and Medicare, and will guarantee that veterans are always cared for. Always, always, always. I used to get criticized when I first got elected years ago. I'd say we have a lot of obligations, but only one truly sacred obligation. To prepare those we send to war and to care for them and their families when they come home. That's a sacred obligation. A sacred obligation. Well, folks, that's why I pushed and signed a thing called the PACT Act. The PACT Act guarantees health care for service members and veterans exposed to toxic burn pits. Let me go hold. These burn pits are literally the size of a football field and range in depth from 8 to 10 feet. There's everything in them from jet fuel and just everything is burned in there. Remember all the fight about the cancer and the brain cancer so many firefighters are getting from the 9/11 and toxic exposure? Well, it's the same kind of thing. I've been in and out of Iraq and Afghanistan over 30 times. I had a son who spent a year in Iraq. His hooch was literally less than 200 yards from one of these burn pits. Well, this new proposal guarantees health care for the service members and veterans exposed to toxic burn pits. Because here's what it does. Like my son, so many went incredibly fit and came home dizzy and having trouble, and so many had brain cancer. My son came home with stage 4 glioblastoma, and he passed away. But here's what we did. Up to now, we don't pay any attention to this. We haven't done anything for it. And we had to fight to get it done. And now for thousands and thousands of people coming home, more people coming home from these wars with brain cancer than any other war in American history, and other cancers. But guess what? Now, if they come home and you're still alive, you get full benefits from health care to try to fight it. And the families and the children get monthly stipends for their families and tuition help for the children. Look, folks, it's not just about the economy. Let's talk a little bit about crime and keeping communities safe. I signed the most significant gun safety law in nearly 30 years. I proposed over 100,000 new police officers. But here's the deal. Public safety is why John got into public service in the first place. Oz won't do a thing about guns. But John Fetterman vetoed, but with your votes, John Fetterman will be in the Senate and be able to help me add one more thing what I got done when I was a senator. Ban assault weapons. Ban them. Ban them. Ban them. They have no place in America. But if Republicans take control of the Congress, they're going to pass another ban. They want to have a national ban on abortion. The overturning Roe wasn't the end for them. It was just the beginning. States are already passing bans, without exception, for rape or incest with the life of the mother. And Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina is going to make sure that if Oz is elected, and other Republicans, they're going to ban choice completely. Let me tell you something. If they get enough states to do that, they get the Congress to vote for that, I will veto it. It will not happen. But if we elect John Fetterman to the Senate and keep control of the House, we can restore the right to choose in this country by codifying Roe v. Wade and make it the law of the land. And with Josh Shapiro as governor, there'll be no ban in Pennsylvania. Look, folks, I spoke a few days ago in Washington, just as I spoke a few weeks ago here in Philadelphia about democracy being at risk. Democracy is literally on the ballot. This is a defining moment for the nation. And we all must speak with one voice regardless of our party. There's no place in America for political violence. No place for what we saw happen to Paul Pelosi, a friend of mine, and Nancy's husband. No place for voter intimidation. You see these guys stand there with rifles outside of polling places? Come on. Where the hell do you think you are? No, well, I shouldn't get going. But there's no place for this. There's no place for this, period. We have to reaffirm the values that have long defined us. In America, the vote is sacred. The vote is to be protected and counted. And folks, let me close with this. Here in Philadelphia, a place that defines the soul of America, today, I've been saying this for now years, today we face an inflection point. One of those moments that comes along every several generations. One of those moments that you're going to look back on it years from now and know whether or not we met the moment based on the state of affairs 10, 15 years from now. I want you to know we're going to meet that moment, just like we've done before. We're going to enter those final days of this midterm election, remembering that the power of America is in your hands. It really is. With people, just remember, your vote elected Barack Obama president. Your vote elected a son from Scranton president. Your vote elected Kamala Harris, the first black woman vice president. And with your vote, you can elect Josh Shapiro as your next governor. You can elect John Fetterman as your next United States senator. Folks, I've never been more optimistic about America's prospects. I mean it from the bottom of my heart. I've never been more optimistic. Looking around this crowd, it reinforces what I think. The generation between the ages of 18 and 30 is the most involved, the most generous, the least prejudiced, and the most engaged generation in American history. I look at America reasserting itself around the world and lead the world in the 21st century. I've traveled this country and seen this great nation because we are good people. I know this. There's no quit in John Fetterman. There's no quit in Pennsylvania. There is no quit in America. We just have to remember who we are. We are the United States of America. I mean it. And there's nothing beyond our capacity if we work together. So vote. Get out and vote. And may God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you.
To be with all of you here. 13 months ago, I launched this campaign for governor. We've crisscrossed the United States, showing up in your hunt clubs and on your street corners, listening to the good people of Pennsylvania and learning from them, hearing them talk to me about their hopes and their fears, their worries and their challenges, showing me pictures of their kids and telling me stories about where they want to go in this world. I return to you today, 13 months later, hopefully a better candidate than when I started, and certainly a man who has been humbled by this process. You know, my wife Lori and I, and she's here tonight, she is going to be a great First Lady of Pennsylvania. My wife Lori and I have dedicated ourselves to public service for two fundamental reasons. The first is because of our family. We are blessed with 4 amazing children. Their names are Sophia, Jonah, Max, and Ruben, and I look in their eyes every day and I worry. I worry about their planet. I worry about their safety. I worry, and moms and dads, you'll understand this, I worry that we brought our children into this world at a time where maybe, just maybe, they have fewer opportunities than the world I was blessed to be born into 49 years ago. And I worry about your kids and your grandkids as well. That's one reason I do what I do. The second reason I do what I do is because of my faith. Now listen, I'm not here to preach at you or tell you what to believe or to believe at all, but I want you to know what I believe. You see, my scripture teaches me that no one is required to complete the task, but neither are we free to refrain from it. That means that each of us has a responsibility to get off the sidelines, to get in the game, and to do our part. So Pennsylvania, I come to you 13 months after we started to tell you I am prepared to do my part as the next governor of this great Commonwealth. You see, as I've crisscrossed this Commonwealth, I see a time where we have great opportunity, but also where we have a whole lot of work to do to defend our fundamental freedoms and protect our democracy. And when I think about the great opportunities that we have, the first place I think of is in our public school classrooms. And when I'm your governor, we will fully fund public education. But it's not just about writing a check to our schools. It's about making sure our schools are opportunity zones for all God's children, where our kids have a chance to really learn. So when I'm governor, we will finally do away with our reliance on standardized testing. That's right. It is not a measurement of how well a kid learns or how well a teacher teaches. And in its place, how about we bring VOTEC back to our high school classroom? We got to give our kids an opportunity to succeed. We have to make sure in every classroom we've got a terrific and well-paid teacher. And our kids deserve to have all the books and computers they need, but you know what else they deserve? They deserve to know when they are feeling worried, when they are feeling anxious, that they can walk down the hallway and find a mental health counselor in every school building across our Commonwealth. Good schools for our children, but we also have to make sure that every one of those kids, when they walk to and from school, have a safe community to live in. Hear me on this. We'll hire more police, but we'll make sure the police are from the community that they're sworn to serve and protect. We'll make sure they look like the community that they represent. They'll be properly trained. Because understand, this is where I come down on it, people have a right to be safe and feel safe in their communities. Good schools and safe communities and an economy that's going to lift everybody up. We got to raise wages across this Commonwealth, and it starts by raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. By making sure that that young person that finally learned VOTEC in their high school classroom can make their way into a state-funded union apprenticeship program. And we need to make sure we give everyone an opportunity to succeed. Open up the doors of opportunity to those who have been shut out. And so on day one of our Shapiro-Davis administration, I will sign an executive order doing away with the college degree requirement for thousands of state government jobs, opening up the doors of opportunity for those who didn't have it before. We'll plant some flags again in this Commonwealth and show that we can take the fight to every other state. We'll create tens of thousands of green energy jobs right here in Pennsylvania and lead the nation. We'll lead the nation again when it comes to biotech and robotics. We will show the rest of the world that Pennsylvania is open for business. Good schools and safe communities, an economy that lifts everybody up. But the way we do this is we need a governor who knows how to take on big fights. I know a little something about taking on big fights. Just ask those student loan companies we took to court and won and canceled $200 million in student debt for Pennsylvania students and their families. You know, as Attorney General, we've arrested over 8,200 drug dealers in this Commonwealth. But I understand this crisis didn't start on our street corners. This crisis started as a result of the greedy executives in pharmaceutical company boardrooms. So we took them on too, and we won. And we took $1 billion of their ill-gotten gains and brought it back to Pennsylvania for treatment because we understand drug addiction is a disease, not a crime. When one of the largest contractors in Pennsylvania thought it was a good idea to rip off Pennsylvania workers like Harry and Agnes who were doing backbreaking work on Pennsylvania's roadways, I found out about it. We filed criminal charges, brought the largest wage theft case in the history of the United States of America. Because here's the thing. You mess with a Pennsylvania worker, you got to go through me. We won and put all $21 million back in the pockets of our workers the week before Christmas last. But I want you to know I'm not done taking on big fights. I got another big fight in me. It comes in 3 days when we defeat Doug Mastriano in this governor's race. That's right. And here's the thing. We must defeat Doug Mastriano in this governor's race. You know, he has said his number one priority isn't cutting your costs, isn't making our communities safer, isn't helping our school kids. No, he has said his number one priority is to ban all abortion with no, hang on. I'm not done. He wants to ban all abortion with no exception, not for rape or incest or even to save the life of the woman. And he has said he wants to charge women with murder for having this life-saving medical procedure. Now here's the thing. This legislature is going to put that bill on the desk of the next governor. He'll sign it into law. I will veto that bill and trust the women of Pennsylvania to make decisions over their own bodies. This is a guy who doesn't respect women here in Pennsylvania. In fact, if you don't think like Doug Mastriano, if you don't look like him, if you don't vote like him, if you don't worship like him, if you don't marry like him, you don't count in his Pennsylvania. You know how I know that? Because I know where he was on January the 6th. He went there that day, understand, he went there that day not to hear a speech or protest. He went there that day to stop your vote from being counted because he doesn't respect you. And he's already told us what he plans to do the next time in 2024. He has said he's going to use his power as governor to, his words, not mine, review the voting logs, make corrections, and then he plans to decertify certain voting machines in this Commonwealth so he gets to pick the winner. Let me ask you a question. What voting machines do you think this guy's going to decertify? Probably the ones here in Philadelphia, right? Are we going to let him get away with that? Listen, that is not how our democracy works. That's not how we do things in this Commonwealth or in this country. And that is not freedom. You know, this guy loves to talk a good game about freedom, right? Let me tell you something. It's not freedom to tell women what they're allowed to do with their bodies. That's not freedom. It's not freedom to tell our children what books they're allowed to read. It's not freedom when he gets to decide who you're allowed to marry. I say love is love. It's not freedom to say you can work a 40-hour work week, but you can't be a member of the union. That's not freedom. And it sure as hell isn't freedom to say you can go vote, but he gets to pick the winner. That's not freedom. That's not freedom. But you know what? You know what we're for? We're for real freedom. And let me tell you what real freedom is. Real freedom is when you see that young child in North Philly and you see the potential in her, so you invest in her public school. That's real freedom. That's real freedom. Real freedom comes when we invest in that young child's neighborhood to make sure it's safe so she gets to her 18th birthday. That's real freedom. Real freedom comes when we put Votech in her school and opened up her eyes to the possibility of being a welder. We sent her to a union apprenticeship program, and we believed in her, so she started a small business right here in North Philadelphia. That's real freedom. Real freedom comes when she hires a whole bunch of people that were never going to have a shot before. They went on to marry the people they love, worship where they want, live in a community that is safe, live in a place that respects them. That is real freedom, and that is what's on the ballot right now. Real freedom. Real freedom is on the ballot in 3 days. Folks, let me tell you something. My name may be on the ballot. Austin Davis's name may be on the ballot. But it's your rights. It's your future that's on the line. And right now, we need to do the work to claim our future together. This is a moment in our politics where I know it's easy to get a little down. It's easy to wonder whether or not we can solve big problems anymore. Whether because of how frayed and divided our politics are, whether we can meet this moment and address these big challenges. I stand before you today a man who is more optimistic than when I began this process. More optimistic because I've had the opportunity to get to know all of you. Because I've seen how hopeful you are. And because I know as a nation, we've been here before. 246 years ago, our democracy was born right here in Philadelphia. 246 years ago it was born, but over these last 2.5 centuries, what we've done as Americans is we've done the hard work to perfect our union. We've done the hard work to move the ball forward. And so I stand before you today hopeful because I've seen this play out before, where folks, not with titles next to their names, but ordinary Pennsylvanians, ordinary Americans rose up and spoke up and demanded more and sought justice and looked our children in the eyes and said, we are going to leave this place better for you than the way we found it. That's why I'm so optimistic today. We have been here before and we have met this test. And so in 3 days, we face another test, another opportunity. I ask you today to believe not in me, but believe in yourselves. Each of you has a vote, but each of you has a voice, a powerful voice. And this is a moment where we've got to sing in unison. We've got to believe together. We've got to rise up. We've got to make our ancestors proud. And we've got to do the hard work necessary to move our Commonwealth forward. And so all I ask of you is if you can use your voices, if you can lend your voices over these next 3 days here in Philadelphia and all across Pennsylvania, if you can do the hard work necessary to win this race, then I promise you, I will bust my ass for you for the next 4 years as your governor. Thank you all very much. God bless you all. Let's get this done. Thank you.
Please welcome back to the stage Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman.
Hello. Let me tell you a truth. This is the first and last time I'm ever going to get to walk down a catwalk. Male modeling never picked up for me at all. I don't know. You know, as you know, I'm running against Dr. Oz. Yeah. Yes, you know. And you know what Dr. Oz is, he's very just about pandering. He likes to pander. So, on a different note, I just really want to get this off my chest right now that Wawa is so much better than Sheetz. My whole life. I was all about that, right? You know. And no, let me tell you. So, hey, did somebody ever hear that I had a stroke? Dr. Oz never lets me forget that. But let me tell you, anyone in recovery of having a stroke, really the worst guy you have to go before Barack Obama coming up has got to be the worst. The GOAT. So, tonight, Dr. Oz is going to be on a stage with Donald Trump tonight. And Doug Mastriano. A true exercise in moderation. But tonight, I get to spend this stage with two presidents our next governor, and we are all 100% sedition free. And Oz, of course, stands with Mastriano, and they all want to ban all abortions right here in Pennsylvania. But I got to tell you, we're so grateful to have Josh Shapiro as our next governor, because he would never let that stop on his watch. You know, I'm running to serve Pennsylvania. Oz is running to use Pennsylvania. He spent over $27 million of his own money to try to buy this seat here. Pennsylvania is not for sale. You know, as I said, I had a stroke, and it really knocked me on my back. But I got back up. In fact, my life was my life was saved by Penn Medicine right here in Philadelphia. But this right now is that's what 5 months of recovery looks like right now. And sometimes I'm going to miss some things, some words. I might mush two words together, but I'll always make sure I make the right votes in Washington, D.C. And you know what? And you know what? There's another truth too. By January, I'll feel even better and better. But Oz will still be a fraud. He often seems like he's often a joke, but it's really not funny. Because you know what? Abortion rights is all on the ballot right now. Oz believed that local political officials should be the person making those kind of choices. Would you want Doug Mastriano making those choices between a woman and their doctor? Hey, I'm a local political official, but that's not my choice to be making. That choice comes between a woman and their doctors, and that's what I'm always going to fight for. Inflation's hurt working families in Pennsylvania. But you need a senator that really understands what that really means and what that looks like and sounds. But Oz owns 10 gigantic mansions. He's never experienced inflation. Doesn't really have taken a choice to ever care about that. But we must always push back against corporate greed. Inflation hurts Pennsylvania families, but it relieves $10 billion in profits for with Shell. We have to call it what it is. Price gouging and pushback, and we must always start making more and more things right here in Pennsylvania and right here in this country. Dr. Oz, for all his show and all his merchandise, all of it was manufactured right in China. There's only one candidate in this race that is going to stand on the side of the union way of life and making sure more things are made right here in Pennsylvania and in America. And also, let me make you that bargain right now. That bargain is, I want to be that 51st vote in Washington, D.C. We were the first campaign to actually call eliminating the filibuster. We got to get rid of the filibuster because we have to make some really fundamental changes here in this nation. Who realizes what our minimum wage is right now? $7.25. Who can live off $7.25 an hour? Oz refuses to commit to raising our minimum wage. I believe that all work has dignity, and every paycheck must have dignity as well, too. We need to expand our health care, the same kind of health care that saved my life. That should be, my health care that saved my life should be the same kind of health care that might save your life. And I can't believe that in 2022, we're still now arguing about marriage equality here, too. I'm proud to say that in 2013, I was the only elected official in Pennsylvania that was willing to solemnize the first gay marriage in Pennsylvania. Governor Tom Corbett threatened to have me arrested, and I said, you know where I live, you can come send the gay police to go get me. And also, of course, codifying Roe v. Wade. I run on Roe v. Wade. Celebrates the demise of Roe v. Wade. That's the choice that we have between us, in front of us. This is one of the biggest races in this nation. And they've spent over $100 million to try to destroy me. And here we're still standing. And we're going to need every one of you to vote and tell your friends and your families to make sure you're willing to make sure you're out to turn out every vote. And my last favor of every one of you would be to please make sure we send Dr. Oz back across the bridge. And send me to D.C. so I can stand and fight for all of you. Thank you. Thank you, Temple.
Please welcome back to the stage the 44th President of the United States, Barack Obama.
Hello, Philadelphia. Are you fired up yet? Man, I was backstage. I was getting fired up. I'm ready to go. It is good to be back in Pennsylvania. It is good to be back in the center right now of the sports world. Phillies have a chance to tie the World Series tonight. Eagles look like they might be the best football team in the country. The Sixers, well, it's early. It's still early, so we won't talk about them right now. But I am not here to talk about sports, people. I am here to talk about something more basic. I am here to ask you to vote for your next governor, Josh Shapiro, for your next United States Senator, John Fetterman, for all the Democrats up and down the ticket. And listen, let's face it. If you're at this rally, I'm assuming you're voting. But I don't just need you to vote. I need you to gather up your friends and family and make sure that they are also voting. I know there are probably some students here, right? You know that roommate of yours who, well-meaning, nice person, but they're a little bit slack. You know, they're the folks who they'll leave stuff in your little mini fridge a little too long because they forgot about it. Sometimes they miss class in the morning. and in the afternoon, that person, they might tell you they're voting, but they might not have voted yet. So you've got to help them. Make sure that they turn out, because this election requires every single one of us to do our part. It's that important. It is that important. You heard our president talk about the stakes in this election. You heard Josh Shapiro and John Fetterman talk about the stakes in this election. A fair economy that gives working people a fair shot. That's on the ballot. Fundamental rights are on the ballot. Truth and facts and logic and reason and basic decency are on the ballot. Democracy itself is on the ballot. The stakes are high. Yes. The stakes are high. But look, I want to be honest, because sometimes, political rallies, everybody's feeling optimistic, everybody's getting fired up. But I want folks to listen to this. I want people to be clear. Midterms are always hard for whichever party is in the White House. And typically midterms are tougher on Democrats. A lot of folks don't pay attention to politics the way they do in a presidential year. Maybe they don't think that Congress matters as much. Maybe they don't think their vote will matter as much. Younger people especially are less likely to vote in midterms, and that hurts Democrats because younger people trend in a more progressive direction. And I can tell you, I can tell you from experience that midterms matter a lot. Well, some of you are too young, but let me refresh your memories or give you a history lesson. When I was president, I got my butt whooped in midterm elections. I was elected in the midst of a financial crisis, and we did the right things to get the economy back on track, but it was slow, and people were frustrated. And just like they are right now, after we're coming out of a crisis. Sometimes it takes a while for things to settle down, but people are experiencing things right now, immediately, right? And so we lost in 2010, we lost the House. And then in 2014, even though now the economy was improving, we saw the lowest voting rate recorded in modern history, maybe, in recent memory, and we lost the Senate. And because we did, progress on big, important issues, from immigration to gun safety to climate change, either got a lot harder or in some cases just ground to a halt. There you go. Now, I'm not big on looking backwards, but sometimes I can't help imagine what it would have been like if enough people had turned out to vote in those elections. And imagine if we had maintained control of the House and we had maintained control of the Senate. Imagine if we had been able to fix our broken immigration system back in 2011. Imagine if we'd been able to pass meaningful gun safety legislation back then to prevent more deaths. Imagine if we'd been able to reduce our emissions even further than we did. We'd be further along in avoiding the worst impacts of climate change. If we had kept the Senate in 2014, we'd have a very different Supreme Court making decisions about our most basic rights. So midterms are no joke. Yeah, sometimes we get so focused on the presidency. But I am here to tell you that our democracy works as a team sport. A president can't do stuff alone. That's not how our system is set up. So what happens in the House, what happens in the Senate is vitally critical. And the good news is you have an outstanding president right now in the White House. So you don't have to just imagine what might happen. He's doing stuff right now, solving problems right now with a Democratic Congress, and he can continue it if you vote. Think about what Joe Biden has already got accomplished. Despite a historic pandemic, he not only repaired the economy and kept unemployment low, which, by the way, you should not take for granted. Because a lot of folks thought with a historic pandemic like that and the shutdown that we would potentially go into a Great Depression. And we did not. And unemployment is very low right now because of the actions he took. He's lowered healthcare and prescription drug costs. He passed an infrastructure bill that will put more folks here in Pennsylvania and around the country to work and make our economy stronger. He's made the biggest investment in clean energy in history. If you help Democrats keep the House and get a few more seats in the Senate, you can guarantee he'll make more progress on the issues you care about. You've seen what he's accomplished with the barest of margins. If you vote, he can do even more, but it depends on you. It depends on you. Now, Republicans know this. And that's why they're doing everything they can to prevent you from voting. This is one of the only major parties worldwide that actively tries to discourage citizens from voting. Hey, don't boo. Vote. Vote. They can't hear you boo, but they'll hear your vote. So they pass laws to make it harder to vote. A lot of times, many of the elected officials or the people who are running to run elections right now are suggesting that maybe they would not count votes, nullify votes, overturn votes. But the big tactic that they're going to use, because they always do this, especially in midterms, year after year, election after election, they will try to make you afraid. They will resort to fear. They want to scare the living daylights out of everybody. And most of the time, those fears have a very slender relationship to reality. So back in 2010, Republicans tried to make everybody afraid about deficits and death panels. Oh, deficits are going to ruin the country. It turns out the deficits didn't explode. We actually brought them down. And by the way, as soon as they got a Republican in office, they didn't suddenly care about deficits and pass big tax cuts for the wealthy. Weren't paid for. Thank you. Man, we've got some outstanding historians here. That's good. Because you were only 8 when all this happened. So I'm impressed you knew this. 10 years later, not a single person has faced a death panel from Obamacare. On the other hand, 35 million people now have health coverage thanks to the Affordable Care Act, and Joe Biden just made it that much cheaper to sign up. So that was their tactic in 2010. 2014, Same playbook. Try to make you afraid of everything. You had Ebola and ISIS and immigrants, and they were all coming to your neighborhood. It turned out there were no ISIS fighters pouring across the border. By the fall, the number of migrants, they were mostly unaccompanied children, had dropped considerably. And then it turned out that we knew how to prevent Ebola from reaching our shores because, you know what? We believed in science. It was very helpful in dealing with this disease. But, you know what? People got afraid. People got afraid. It was visceral, and so they either didn't turn out in the right places. We lost the Senate. You know what happened because of that. So midterm elections matter. Republicans understand this. I understand it, I promise you. And Joe Biden understands it. And if you keep that in mind, if you ignore the fear-mongering, if you ignore the cynicism, if you vote, then we will keep this country moving forward. But you've got to do it. You have to do it. The only way to make this economy fair, the only way to make our democracy stronger is if we fight for it. You can't take it for granted. And that starts with electing people who know you, who see you, who care about you, who can walk in your shoes and see through your eyes and know what it's like to struggle, know what it's like to get sick, know what it's like to have to pay off student loans, know what it's like when things aren't just handed to you, but you got to work for them. That's what you did 2 years ago when you sent Joe Biden to the White House. He knows you. He's been there. He's fighting for you every day, doing everything he can to put more money in your pocket, to make streets safer, to bring more good-paying jobs here to Pennsylvania. You know, I can tell you that the presidency does not change who you are. You can tell by my successor, it didn't change him. It reveals who you are. It reveals who you are under the stress and strain of the presidency. And the decency, the empathy, the belief that everybody counts, that we have seen on display from Joe Biden these past 2 years, that's who he is. And that's why you need to vote for more leaders like him. That's why you have to vote for Josh Shapiro. That's why you have to vote for John Fetterman. They've shown you who they are. There are a lot of issues at stake in this election. But in every election, the most basic question you should be asking yourself right now is, who will fight for you? Who cares about you? That's the choice that you make in this election like every election. Who will fight for working people who are struggling to pay the bills? Listen, inflation is a real problem right now, not just here, but around the world. It's one of the after effects of the pandemic. It's screwed up supply chains, and it's been compounded by the war in Ukraine, which made energy prices shoot up. And it takes a bite out of everybody's paycheck. And it's frustrating and scary if you're on a fixed income. I get it. So does Joe. But the question is, who's actually going to do something about it? The Republicans who want to gut Social Security and Medicare while giving more tax cuts to the wealthiest among us, more tax cuts to big corporations? I don't think that's going to help you. Or is it Democrats like Joe Biden who are lowering the cost of prescription drugs and helping to bring down gas prices and hold oil companies accountable and make health care more affordable? That's the choice in this election. I mean, who do you really think knows more about budgets and having to pay the bills? John Fetterman or Dr. Oz? Come on. Who will fight to keep your family safe? The Republican politicians who want to flood our streets with more guns, voted against more resources for police departments, or Democratic leaders who worked with Joe Biden to pass the first major gun safety legislation in nearly 30 years. That's the choice in this election. That's what's at stake right now. Who will fight for your freedoms? Is it Republican politicians and judicial appointees who think they should get to decide who you love or when you start a family? Or is it Democratic leaders who believe the most intimate personal decisions that we can make belong to every individual American, not mostly male politicians in Washington? That's the choice in this election. That's what you have to decide. And who is going to actually make democracy work for you? Republicans, they've already promised. They've said it. I'm not making this up. They've said it. You can look it up. They've said their top priority, they're going to spend the next 2 years investigating their political opponents. Now, I don't know how that's going to help you. Some of them said we're going to impeach Biden. They're not quite sure why or what for, but that's irrelevant to them. Think about that. How is that going to help you, your family? Young people launch a career, start a family, get a mortgage. So that's one option. The other option is President Biden and Democratic leaders who've worked together and sometimes even gotten Republicans against their best instincts, I guess, to work with them to create new jobs and lower costs and fight climate change. That's the choice in this election. Between politicians who seem willing to do anything and say anything to get power and those who share your values and want to make your lives better. You just heard from Josh Shapiro. You know what Josh is focused on. He was one of the first people ever to endorse my campaign for president. For some reason, he looks the same and I look a lot older. I don't know why. But he had my back. He had my back. If you elect him your next governor, he will have your back every single day. Growing the economy, cutting taxes for working people, not folks who don't need it, fully funding our schools, supporting our teachers. That's who Josh is. Now, Josh's opponent, he's willing to take the most extreme positions on pretty much everything. I mean, you name it. Global warming, he says it's fake science. Doesn't matter what the thermometers say. Should gay people be allowed to get married or adopt children? Nope. He doesn't think so. He does think it's okay to dress up in a Confederate uniform for a staff photo at the college where he used to teach. And, hey, it wasn't even Halloween. It was like Casual Friday or something. Listen, Pennsylvania, let's remember what century it is. And listen, this would be funny, it would be an SNL skit if it weren't so serious. You cannot let somebody that detached from reality run your state. So let's get out and vote for somebody you can trust. Josh Shapiro. You need to vote for John Fetterman. This is a guy who has been fighting for regular folks his whole life. You can tell. Just talk to him. He's just a dude. He's just like, he is who he says he is. He does not pretend to be somebody else. He doesn't put on airs. He doesn't treat people differently depending on who he's talking to. You can tell what's in his heart, what's in his gut. As your senator, John will help build an economy that works for everyone, because that's his track record. As a mayor, as somebody who worked with kids who didn't have advantages. He's going to improve our criminal justice system. He'll lower costs for Pennsylvania families. And he's tough, and not just because he wears shorts in the winter, which I do not do. He knows what it's like to get knocked down. But John's stroke didn't change who he is. It didn't change what he cares about. And it will not change who he fights for when he gets to the United States Senate. He will fight for you. The only person John's opponent's fighting for is himself, and maybe Donald Trump. What did I say about booing? Do not boo. Vote. No booing, just voting. Look, let's face it, it's easy to joke about Dr. Oz. I mean, some of these, remedies he's pushed on TV, the raspberry ketones and the lavender soap and the palm oil for dementia. But you know what? That matters, because if somebody who knows better, is willing to sell snake oil just to make money, then he's going to be willing to do anything and say anything to get elected, even if it's not good for you. And Pennsylvania, you deserve someone that's honest with you. You deserve somebody who cares about you. You deserve somebody who will tell you what they really think, what they really believe, that won't be looking to see what Donald Trump tells them they should be doing or thinking because it's expedient. Somebody who's going to work for you every day and fight for you. And, by the way, somebody who's actually from Pennsylvania. You deserve somebody like John Fetterman. And you deserve leaders who will stand up for a woman's right to control her own body and make her own health care decisions. I genuinely believe there are people of good conscience who differ from me on abortion, and they should be free to make those choices as their conscience guides them. But we should all agree that women everywhere, whatever their economic station, whatever states they live in, should be able to control what happens with their own bodies. Josh's opponent says he thinks both women who get an abortion and the doctors who help them, who treat them, should be prosecuted. John's opponent said the decision about whether to have an abortion should be made by, quote, women, doctors, and local political leaders. Really? I mean, are you going to petition the mayor? Are you calling the sheriff? City council member? School board? Who exactly should tell you when to start a family? You should make that decision. And if that's not worth 15 minutes of your time, the amount of time it takes to vote, I don't know what is. But if you need another reason to go vote, consider the fact that democracy really is on the ballot. Listen, Democrats may not be perfect. I'm the first one to admit it. I wasn't perfect. Joe, he'll tell you, listen, you're making decisions all the time. We're all human. We all got foibles. But right now, at this moment, with a few notable exceptions, most Republican politicians aren't even pretending that the rules apply to them anymore. They're not even pretending that facts apply anymore. They just make stuff up. Josh's opponent was at the Capitol on January 6th. He was there. I mean, and you know, he wasn't just an observer. John's opponent hired people who were there to work on his campaign. He decided, well, now, yeah, I don't know if it was the guy with the Viking hat or who, but he decided I need that guy on my campaign. Both of them to this day, have refused to say that Joe Biden won the last election. Now listen, I understand that democracy might not seem like a top priority right now, especially when you're worrying about paying the bills. But when true democracy goes away, we've seen throughout history, we've seen around the world, when true democracy goes away, people get hurt. It has real consequences. This is not an abstraction. Governments start telling you what books you can read and which ones you can't. Dissidents start getting locked up. Reporters start getting locked up if they're not towing the party line. Corruption reigns because there's no accountability. People get hurt. There are consequences. There's a reason why generations of Americans fought and died for our democracy. There's a reason why suffragists and union members and civil rights activists marched and struggled and in some cases gave their lives for this precious thing, this experiment in self-governance. They understood how precious it was. They fought to broaden and expand who would be included in we the people. And they understood that when democracy withers, it's hard to restore. You can't take it for granted. You have to work for it. You have to nurture it. You have to fight for it. Now, the good news is you get to make a difference as long as you turn out to vote. You can fight for it as long as you turn out to vote. You can bolster and strengthen our democracy as long as you get out there and do what needs to be done. You know, we joke in my household that Michelle, you know, she's got a dazzling smile. Yeah. I mean, listen, I understand there's, in terms of popularity, there's basically Michelle, Malia, Sasha, Sonny, our dog, then me. I understand. She's hot. She's smart. She is. She's charming. She's intelligent. I get it. But here's a little secret about Michelle. You know, in our household, she can be a little bit of the glass half empty person sometimes. You know, she can get a little discouraged about what she sees happening. And you know, I'm the hope and change guy. So I'm usually a little more optimistic. And so if she's been watching the news or reading the papers and some crazy stuff is taking place, which is basically every 10 minutes. You know, she can get a little down, and I'll say, hey, honey, everything's going to be okay. And I believe that. I believe things will be okay. But I also know that things won't be okay on their own. They'll be okay if we make the effort. It'll be okay if we work for it, not just on Election Day, but every day in between. And I know, look, I know some of you probably feel like Michelle does sometimes, because I feel, even me, the hope and change guy, I can get discouraged. Politics is so nasty and mean, and it just seems like people will say anything and do anything. And it can be depressing sometimes. And a lot of what we used to take for granted. Things like respect and common decency and telling the truth and believing in science and the idea that every vote should count and that the person with the most votes win. All that somehow has become controversial. But I was listening backstage to what Josh talked about, the experience of him running for governor and traveling around the state. And it reminded me of the experience that I had first as a state senator traveling around my district, and then as a U.S. Senate candidate in Illinois, and then as a presidential candidate. It's such a privilege to be able to meet people from every walk of life, folks who look different and live in different places. And it would always remind me, and what we have to remind ourselves, is that there's this common thread. There's this thing that binds us together as Americans. A belief that no matter who we are, or where we come from, what we look like, who we love, what our last name is, how we worship, a belief that all of us matter. The kind of slash and burn politics that we're seeing right now, that doesn't have to be who we are. We can be better. And it has nothing to do, by the way, with political correctness or being too woke. It's about fundamental values that my grandparents from Kansas taught me. Values I grew up with. Values you grew up with. Values we try to teach our kids. Values we learn in churches and mosques and synagogues and temples. Honesty, fairness, opportunity, hard work. Values that Josh Shapiro and John Fetterman stand for. Values that Joe Biden stands for. Values that were enshrined in our founding documents a few miles from here. A clarion call for freedom and equality that Philly's own Liberty Bell represents. That's what America stands for. That's who we are. So if you're anxious and frustrated right now, don't complain. Don't mope. Don't tune out. Get off your couch and do what? Put down your phones and do what? Vote for Josh Shapiro. Vote for John Fetterman. Vote for leaders who will fight for you and your families. Vote for folks who will fight for that big, inclusive, hopeful, forward-looking America that we believe in. Who will work with Joe Biden to build a country that is more fair and more just and more equal and more free. That's our task. Let's get to work. I love you, Philly. I love you, Pennsylvania.